Good evening, folks. Reloading Bench back with you once again. And this is going to be part two of the RANGECRAFT evaluation. The Athlon, not Athlon, but the Athlon RANGECRAFT chronographic radar. So me, took this to the range along with the LabRadar LX. So we took both these chronographs. Took both these chronographs to the range today, and as you'll see, I may have to do some voiceover. I haven't looked at the video yet to see the quality. And by that I mean two things. One, my intent to show the video, the lighting, because it's an outdoor range, but it has an overhead canopy, and then there's always the sound. And the positive was when I took, I don't know if you recall, but when I took this to the range for its initial evaluation, a year and change ago. I did it on the rifle side, I believe, and it was just too loud. I was picking up numbers from benches to my left and right. So I was worried about that today, and that did not happen. And essentially, what I had done was I used this particular sighting rest, and this ultimately turned out to be a failure for a couple reasons. One, the main reason is once I loaded it, and I was using, this is all on 115 grain 9mm. Both chronographs were set up for pistol, less than 2,000 feet per second. I think it was I can't remember what setting, but the appropriate pistol setting. And for feet per second, 115 grain and 10 yards. So the intent was, when you look at, the instructions, which I'll pull out for just the RANGECRAFT, as the actual shooting video is not super long, because I did 4 strings of 5, so 20 shots. I'm sure somebody will complain like, that's not enough, dude. Where is the picture? The one picture I'm looking for of where, I might have to look for it online because I'm not seeing it right now in terms of where the handgun needs to set. So I'll flash a picture of that right now. Essentially, right here at the muzzle, under the muzzle, which is where I was at. So we had. I need to stop saying we because there's only me. Me had both chronographs out. Sitting in front of this particular configuration with my pew-pew. And obviously, I had to take the pew-pew out each time to load it, non-issue. And the issue was, however, because this is locked in, again, this particular rest is meant for sighting or zeroing in a sight, or, red dot or whatever. But this is the exact problem. That couldn't happen. So, when you're normally firing a weapon, bang, 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 everything's good. This particular rest kind of locks that weapon in, and obviously it was a lot tighter than what I'm showing here. So it really couldn't get a muzzle flip, so I was getting failure to eject. So you'll see a couple of failure to ejects. So then I had to go to shooting And well, I raised it up so it was above the chronographs, so the chronographs were still right here, as you'll see. But then shooting it by hand and holding the camera. So you will see some jitter from just the hand movement. In hindsight, you know, as I was at the range, and you guys probably haven't seen this puppy in a long time. And once again, the vibration tosses the mini Pew Pew toy. In hindsight, the ransom rest is meant, you know, when you shoot, it is meant to absorb that recoil. You know, this is what the rest is for. It's like bang, okay, it can go up. And you reset it, bang, it can go up and reset. Bang, and it can go up and reset. I did not bring this rest. I didn't think of bringing this rest, but it really wouldn't have made a whole lot of difference because I don't have the form-fitted heavy-duty inserts that would need to go in here to hold the Pew Pew in a locked-in position. So that really wouldn't have made a whole lot of difference. But this is just a beautiful beast. You know, it's actually been probably a couple years since I restored this. This is a monster. I love this thing. Again, the guy who sold it to me thought it was trashed because it wouldn't operate, and some TLC and cleaning and then building the stand made all the difference. But my recap of the Athlon RANGECRAFT versus the LabRadar LX. I'll probably add my recap at the end of the shooting, so stay tuned. Here's the setup. RANGECRAFT on the right, LabRadar on the left. Switch them out after a few rounds. And I'm doing this from a rest, so we'll see how it acts. Back in a minute. Alright, this is not going to work because I think this is too far away to see both, so I'll plan on shooting and then rotating by hand holding the camera so you can see the two displays. All right, so here we are. They're both set up, and we are going to try and do things in a rest which I never use. All right, so we've got 5 rounds. Very close. And we've got a malfunction. Cleared, so I'm wondering because the rest and how it's locking up might be preventing the radar. Shot. And again, another jam. So I think I'm going to take this out of the rest. All right, so now we're going to shoot by hand because $1088, and we're still getting 1149, 1151, 1122, 1121, and we're out for our 5. All right, next 5 rounds, and the reason we're doing 5 rounds is because this 10-round mag only holds 9 rounds. 1158, 1160, 1162, 1166, 1186, 1189. And the reason I did those last 2 a little fast is just to demonstrate that the RANGECRAFT was able to catch both, whereas the LabRadar did not. It was still analyzing. All right, so I'm going to switch sides. So we've switched sides. Got another 5 rounds in here. 1098, 1096, 1143, 1143, 1105, 1104, 1177, 1177, 1082, 1082. That's impressive. All right, my last string of 5. Again, we ended at 1082, 1082, 1163. I don't know if the LabRadar picked that up. It doesn't seem like it. 1099, 1098, 1185, 1187, 1102, 1101, 1163, and 1163, and we are done. All right, here's my recap of the Athlon RANGECRAFT versus the LabRadar LX in terms of performance. And as I tried to explain in my initial setup, I wanted to have the camera that I'm recording right now mounted to my bench, obviously with the stand, so that there was as much, or rather as minimal, as little human interaction as possible, essentially me just pulling the trigger. That didn't happen. So I had to, and the reason for that is because where I could mount the camera to the bench, I thought it was just too far away to visually see both screens. And even, again, I haven't looked at the video yet. So I do recall that after each shot, I called out, I would pan to each chronograph and call out their numbers. So, in my mind, before I went to the range, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to do, left, right, backwards, forwards, backwards. And due to how I was shooting, again, essentially like this, so that the muzzle was appropriately spaced per the instructions, which again, I'll show the picture for the chronographs. And I then went to, shooting with my right hand. I'm right-handed, and holding the camera on its mount like this, and then panning back and forth, as you saw in the video that I have not yet seen. And the thing that I'll use the word surprised me is how close in accuracy. Well, accuracy is a pretty nebulous term, because how do I know this is accurate? How do I know that's accurate? So I'm going to assume this is accurate and this is accurate based on, how it came from the factory and what it's supposed to do. So I'm going to make some basic assumptions that, is this more accurate than this? And I don't think that's the right term. I think the right term is, does the number this shows in terms of the speed of my reloads, and these were all my reloads, the variances, the deltas, does what this or this show equal each other? Because I've seen other videos where they've shown the Athlon, the RANGECRAFT Athlon, not so much the LabRadar, but more specifically the RANGECRAFT against the Garmin XERO. And my interest, again, in the RANGECRAFT was not to test against the XERO, because I don't have a XERO, but to test against the LabRadar LX. And again, there was no bash on the LabRadar LX. I love my LabRadar LX. Again, do I wish this was a metal tripod? I do, because this is a metal casing, whereas this is a plastic casing and this is a metal tripod. So maybe I should switch each. Then I would have plastic and metal. Do I believe the value for this is $600? Prior to receiving this RANGECRAFT, my answer would be yes. Do I still feel that this is worth $600? Now that's going to be a subjective and personal question, and it's going to come down to things like, do you prefer aluminum over plastic? And, you know, some of the goodies. This comes with a form-fitting case. I had to find my own case, make my own thing, cut it out, all that good stuff. I can get an external battery for each one, so that's a non-issue. They're approximately the same size, and by that I mean taking up bench space to do your testing, to measure your reloads or your velocities. So I've noticed, in fact, this week, as a matter of fact, Brownells had this for $359, not $399. It debuted at $349, and then the price shot up because, you know, call it tariffs, call it whatever. So this was $399 this week. What's this? The third week of June 2025. This on Brownells right now was $359. The LabRadar. You know, I looked on Midway. It is, it isn't. You know, one link to Midway will say discontinued, another will say $599. This is still available today online for $599. So you're paying full price for this. This is $359. What were some of the characteristics I found and noticed during my session? One, I found them both to be equal in terms of feet per second analysis. Very, very close. Much closer than I've seen in other videos with the RANGECRAFT as compared to the XERO. You know, still within maybe a 1%-ish, but, you know, the deltas were not as close as the deltas between my strings of shots. So I did two strings of 5, and then I switched the radars to each on the other side, and then I did 2 more strings of 5 for a total of 20 shots. And again, some may say that's, you know, too small a sampling. It satisfied me, and it surprised me because in many cases the numbers were identical. Maybe not the decimal point, but, you know, to the left of the decimal point, the numbers were identical, or only, you know, a couple of feet per second difference. So that gave me a great degree of comfort for this and this, because this validated this and this validated that. Strange as that may sound. The readings were so close that, you know, this is a couple years old. This is brand new. The biggest difference to me, and you noticed this before when we would turn them on. In fact, I'll do that test again. That's the LabRadar turning on. That is the RANGECRAFT turning on. So the RANGECRAFT is ready to go right now. You start a new session. LabRadar is still booting up, still thinking. I think I can turn this off and turn it on again as the as the LabRadar LX comes up for its first shot. So, and I think I can go down into my, let me go back out, previous session, and you'll see, you know, my shot summaries and whatnot, just as you are right here. In fact, I'll go into summary. My average of 1140, my min of 1082, my max of 1186. You know, again, standard deviation of 34.2. Very similar, and I don't want to go through this one because it's a little more involved. But my point being, they both were phenomenal to me. So they validated each other. Because again, when you pick a particular device up and you go to the range, you've got that device and you've got that device telling you, you know, what your feet per second are. How do you know that's accurate? This was my way of this validating that and that validating this. The other thing to note, and this is this is kind of a biggie, and this may be a differentiator. And I talked about this on the original unboxing because of what I'd seen in other videos. My range has a relatively strict, they call it 1 long second. So to me, that's more than a second in between shots. No rapid fire, no double taps at my range. So I tried to sneak one in just to demonstrate. And I believe after, if memory serves and after you watch the video, you'll see it happen twice. Once on my attempt at a double tap, or maybe not a double tap, but a less than 1 second interval. The RANGECRAFT picks up everything. You can go bang, bang. The LabRadar does not. And you'll see every single shot, the RANGECRAFT immediately post-analysis. So you shoot your bullet, it goes into analysis mode, and very quickly you see your FPS. The LabRadar LX not quite as fast. It took longer every single time, even to get the exact same number, but it took longer for the LabRadar. So again, if you're doing something, bolt action testing, ladder test of your reloads and your different charges, not a big deal. But if you wanted to, bang, 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 if you wanted to go through your shots pretty quickly, the LabRadar might drop more than one. Whereas the RANGECRAFT, again, I did a small sample, picked everything up. I think there were 2 instances. One that it just missed, and another where I did the double tap. Maybe I wouldn't call it a double tap. I did 2 quick shots, less than a second apart. The RANGECRAFT picked it up where the LabRadar LX did not. Value. That's another tough one because you're going to have to use your own criteria to determine value. If this was, knowing what I know today, if I was buying between a RANGECRAFT, an LX, and a XERO, so Garmin, LabRadar, Athlon, if I was today going to make a decision, a purchasing decision, just as I made my evaluation of LabRadar versus Garmin, plastic versus metal. I'm a LabRadar previous owner, so I had some bias, blah, blah, blah. But they were the exact same price. So I went with the LabRadar. Wasn't unhappy with my decision. But today, if I was at XERO, and no pun intended, if I was without a chronograph, a mini small chronograph that I was looking to purchase, would I go with a XERO, a LabRadar LX, or the RANGECRAFT? And I've got to give it to the RANGECRAFT. And it's for a whole bunch of reasons. And it's a culmination of everything I've talked about in both videos. This case, is that a deciding factor? No, not necessarily. Is it a variable? Yeah, it is. It is. It very much is. Because everything is in this case, and I showed before I could put a battery in here as well. And this fits in my range bag. This does not fit in my range bag. It's easy to take along. I love the fact that it is a hard case, so there is nothing that's going. I am not worried, as I just dropped that. I am not worried if I were to drop this. Ooh, that's my exercise for tonight. If I were to drop this, once I have it in here, in this case, like I just dropped the stand, would I worry? No, I wouldn't. But this is also something I wouldn't worry about because of the foam insulation or the molded insulation as well. Would it be cool if this exact thing was offered in a hard case? Yeah, as an option or an accessory on their website, if they offered, this in a hard plastic, I'd pick that up in a heartbeat. I'd spend the money, sure. So I would go with a RANGECRAFT, and that's not, an endorsement that I would easily make. And I didn't make it on initial box opening and assessment because I wanted to wait for the actual range visit and to see how it performed, how both of them performed, the differences, the similarities, and then you throw price into the mix. This is, I kept saying, $600. This is $599, $600 plus tax plus shipping. You're looking at almost $700. At Brownells today, $350 plus tax shipping, so you're looking at about $400. Is this worth $300 more today than the RANGECRAFT? And I would have to say no, it's not. And the one factor that I liked the most is how fast it boots up and how quickly it analyzes and displays and is ready for the next shot. That is a huge differentiator for me. So for all the other YouTubers that are finding, deltas, I don't know what to say, so I won't say anything. This performed exceptionally well as compared to how my LabRadar LX performs. So I don't have a XERO, not going to get a XERO, so you won't see a XERO versus any of this comparison from me. I think the RANGECRAFT is an all-around winner. That's not to say I don't believe the LabRadar LX is not a winner as well. Older technology, I wish there was a BIOS update that would speed things up so that the analysis and the response was just as fast as the RANGECRAFT. I also realize this is newer technology, so faster, newer chips and such. And I love the footprint. That is it for tonight. Take care, folks.